Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Behind the Counter podcast. My name is Zane Castillo, and today I am joined with Lindsey. Lindsey, would you like to go ahead and take over and tell us a little bit about yourself today?
Absolutely. So my name is Lindsey Pafumi. I am a regional director for Crave Worthy Brands and Genghis Grill. I am currently on the move to my next greatest position. I'm super excited to go there. I've been in the industry since I was 11 years old. Started under the table as a busser in a small town in Maine, and then grew from there. And just I couldn't see myself doing anything other than restaurants and hospitality.
Under the table, that's what you like to hear. That's awesome. That honestly knocks my first question out of the way. Don't worry, I have plenty. But my first question was, like, when was your first aha moment that the restaurant industry could be your career and not just a job? But it sounds like, I mean, you've known since day one.
So when I was a small child, my parents had separated. I was about 8 years old, and my mom used to bring me to the restaurant with her, and I would sit upstairs down and bus tables and clean the restaurant. They would feed me for it, and it was so ingrained in me from a small child on that that's what I knew, and I loved it. I loved the people part. I loved the food, and so I continued on from there as soon as I could get a job. I mean, not legally, but my first opportunity. I started working as a busser in a little diner and then got my worker's permit and started in a country club and just grew from there. I tried to get out of it for a short period of time and went to real estate school, got my real estate license, but had two small children at the time and didn't realize how expensive it was to sell houses.
Yeah, I myself had thought about going the real estate route, but I just can't get myself behind. I can't get behind extra schooling for it. I mean, that's awesome though, to be in the restaurant industry for that long. I mean, I can only imagine the things that you've been able to see and accomplish and get done. Obviously, you touched on it a little bit there, but was there ever a moment aside from when you went for the real estate agent route, was there ever a time where you thought like, I don't know if this is for me?
No, I always wanted to dabble in other things and I always wanted to learn more and have other experiences. But I think deep down in my soul, I always knew this is what works for who I am as a person. And I knew I was going to grow in it and I will open my own concept someday. And that's my end goal. And I have my business plan and everything set out for three different concepts. It's just not the time for me currently, but I always knew this was my industry.
Wow, that's awesome. Being in the industry for that long, I'm interested to hear how you would define culture.
Organizational culture, I think, is a combination of things. It's positive training and having a mindset of belonging in where you are. And I think organizational culture and specifically is the most important part of any organization, but most importantly in the hospitality industry, because we deal with people every day. That is what we do. We are selling ourselves and our product, but ultimately we're selling ourselves to our guests daily. And if you don't truly deep down love what you do, then that comes across. You can see that authenticity when you truly love what you do. And I think an organization that has a positive culture, that has a structure and that sense of belonging for people,
Right.
I think that goes a long way in making people really enjoy, truly authentically enjoy what they do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In your role, coming off of being a regional director, how did you take it into your own hands to kind of cultivate that culture for the people underneath you? Because, of course, there's going to be things that you see that other people don't. But a lot of times it's on the higher ups to dwindle those things away and take away the worries and, all of the things that make work not as enjoyable. How did you kind of cultivate that culture as a regional director in your role at Genghis?
So for me, it all starts with training and ensuring that everyone on your team fully understands what it is that they're expected to do and staying consistent with that. And then truly getting to know each individual on a very personal and professional basis. I think when you cut the personal connection out, that cuts a huge piece out of them as a whole. And then you can lose sight of that culture. So I've always told people, like, I'm very good at people. And I get the question all the time is, do you mean you're good with people? And yes, I'm good with people, but I'm good at people because I spend time studying people and what motivates them and what drives them. And I get to know them on a deeper level where I understand their personality, what makes them tick, what makes them excited, what affects them in a negative fashion. And then I'll use that to both the organization's benefit, but to their own benefit to help them grow as an individual.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I love that. I think that that's awesome. And we need, I mean, a lot of times it's very easy to come across a manager, but it's harder to come across a leader. And I think that kind of things that you just said and what you look for and how you cultivate culture are indicative of a leader. Just to stay on the culture piece just a little bit longer, I would like to see, is there ever a time where you personally just didn't align with the culture and you either had to work around it or get another job or, you know, whatever the case is? And I'm sure there can be plenty of times. Is there one that really stands out to you of like, yeah, the culture wasn't it at that place? Or, and you don't have to say names, but just, you know, kind of how you worked around it.
Oh, absolutely. So I was the GM of a restaurant several years ago. At that time, the owner of the restaurant would come in, and you never knew how he was going to react when he came in, whether he was going to throw things at people and fire them on the spot,
Oh,
or
wow.
for everyone drinks in the middle of a shift. And it was so inconsistent and such a wild roller coaster ride that everyone, including myself, were constantly walking on eggshells because we didn't know what was right or wrong that day. There was no training, there was no structure, there was no consistency. And I tried my hardest and I stayed for years. And I finally had the conversation with him one night when he called and asked to speak to a server in the middle of a Saturday night rush to ask him for things he shouldn't have been asking about. I got on the phone with him and I said, do not come into this restaurant until after close or I will leave. I will walk out. And then we had the conversation face to face that night after close when he came in. This is disheartening our employees. This inconsistency that is, it's just a stressful experience. And it got to the point where people didn't want to come to work if they knew he
Mm,
was going to show up that day. And I had to set that boundary with him. And it was a very scary moment for me to confront my boss and the person that signed my paychecks in the way that he handled his restaurant. Because at the end of the day, it's his location. That's his baby. But if I'm going to be running it and I'm going to be the face of it and trying to keep the employees motivated and happy, then I had to have that conversation with him. And we did, and it went very well, and things went well from there on out until I eventually left just due to the working conditions. As a GM, I was working 100 hours a week, every week,
oh, wow.
rarely had days off, and it was assisting with other locations when I wasn't in there. And it just got too much on me personally where I burned out. And so I left.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely understand. And I've been in situations as well where maybe I wasn't working 100 hours a week, but I was working a decent amount. And I mean, burnout is so incredibly hard to deal with because a lot of times we dictate ourselves as less than because we just can't do what we know we used to do or what we were able to do at one point. How did you, I mean, how did you handle that, the burnout within yourself and how long did it take to kind of recuperate from that?
So I am, I guess I would say, an interesting individual. I have a few different mental health issues, and growing up in chaos, I thrive in chaos. So it doesn't take me long to recuperate from burnout, but I notice in myself, I'll put myself right back into a position to burn out again. I have this cycle where I'll need to take that rest time. And I did. I took a week off. I actually ended up in the hospital after the end of that job
Oh,
with a
wow.
porphyria attack because of the stress that it put on my body and my mental health. After that, I got right back into the game and right back on it. And being in our industry, burnout is so normal. It's normalized to work between 10 and 17-hour shifts, sometimes 18, 19-hour shifts without stopping or eating or resting or having a moment to breathe. And it's so normalized to work 6 or 7 days a week that it's just expected in our industry. So it's normal to burn out. And I think a lot of us, like myself included, will just accept it and try to talk ourselves out of the fact that we're burnt out.
Right, absolutely. And I'm glad you said that because in the most purest form, that is what this podcast is for. I mean, obviously there's three main things that I like talking about. The impact of a good leader, mental health struggles, and how to overcome. That's the point of having these discussions, is because we get to talk to the people who are on the front line, who are actively working to make a difference in their own lives and the people around them. And I really appreciate you sharing that. It's not easy. It's really not. When you say you continue, you thrive in chaos, and you put yourself into a position where you go from one job to another. How do you maintain a work life balance in that?
I don't. Normally, I don't. I had one job prior to COVID, prior to being furloughed, that I was able to maintain such a fantastic work life balance where I was able to set those boundaries because they assisted in setting those boundaries. And because to the organization, they cared so much about their people, and there was such a focus on work life balance and a positive culture that it allowed me to set those boundaries and to take the time that I needed to do things. So I was working 50 to 60 hours a week, but I was also training for Spartan races 3 times a week. And I was spending that time with my children every night, making dinner for them. And I was focusing on my mental and physical health while still getting exceeding expectations within my job. So I was still able to have that really great drive and go above and beyond. I didn't ever work my 40 to 45 hours. It was always 50 to 60 hours. And I was always trying to get to that next level because that's always what I've been used to, is excelling and going. And for a moment in the beginning of it, I felt bad about it. I felt like I wasn't doing enough because I was so used to working these 17, 18-hour shifts and not taking time for myself. And it was never about me. It was always about the job and then anybody else that I could help, whether that be my family, my friends, or my coworkers or employees. So for a moment, I felt bad about it. And then I realized that it was so important and it was such a wonderful shift in my life. And it was the first and only time in this industry that I ever felt like this company truly, truly understands what it's like to be a real human.
Mm.
And I think that gets lost in our industry because we have this obsession with progression in our industry and this moving forward and fast-paced mentality. And don't get me wrong, this is how we grow and how we expand, and that's fantastic. But often we forget about the people piece of it, and that they're not just employees, they're not just coworkers, they're not just managers. They are real people with real families and real lives and real physical and mental health issues.
Right. No, absolutely. I wonder who's your mentor in the industry, and how have they shaped how you impact others as a leader?
So I wouldn't say I have just one. So many people along my journey have truly impacted me. It began when I was a server and then became a supervisor and then the opener for new restaurants. I worked for L&M Restaurants. I loved my job there. But when I was a server, I had a manager named Lauren Newsom, and she cared so deeply about her people. And she was constantly, how are you doing? How are things at home? Have you eaten today? And just those little things that showed she truly cared, and having those one-on-one conversations before we'd start the day and coming into it with this optimistic, excited energy. That energy just spread. And I had so many terrible leaders before that. To watch her, like, you are the type of leader that I would like to be someday. I would like to be that type of person. And in that same location, the GM of that location, Scott Weichert, I will never forget the day that I wanted to move to assistant manager because I was a supervisor and opening their new restaurant. And he looked at me and he said, things aren't always sunshine and rainbows. And I feel like you're too sunshine and rainbows to be a true leader. And that bothered me at the time. I took offense to it. But it's resonated with me and it's stuck with me my entire career because he wasn't telling me that I was just too kind, it was or just too optimistic. He wanted to prepare me for the difficult things that come along with management. And though it didn't come across right at the time, it stuck with me throughout my career as a manager and as a leader that no, things aren't always sunshine and rainbows, but you can always have that optimistic, positive outlook and spread that to your team. So those two definitely impacted me on my journey. And then Rob Manson in Crave Worthy Brands, he has been wonderful. He has been an outlet for me, both professionally and personally. And I've been able to speak with him about anything. If there's a day that I needed somebody to speak to, he was there and always remained calm and level headed. And he would say the most outrageous things just to make me laugh when I was having a bad day. And it was so important because he knew I needed to laugh.
Wow. We love Rob.
Yes.
So if you could go back now and talk to that version of yourself, that the sunshine and rainbows, what is one piece of information that you would give yourself aside from the knowing that it's not all sunshine and rainbows? What's one piece of advice that you would go back and give yourself now to prepare you better for what lie ahead?
I would tell myself that even when everything seems like it's not going to be okay, that it is going to be okay, that I am so much stronger and I become so much stronger than I ever thought I could be. And that my care for people and my sensitivity is not weakness and that it has been my strength.
I concur with that statement. I think I would tell myself the same. I think there's a lot of times where, especially in young managers, and I say young managers, and that could mean someone who's young, who's getting into management, or it could be someone who's older, who's getting into management, but they're young in their knowledge of management. And I think a lot of times, for me specifically, I would say I got discouraged and I felt like, oh, if this is what the industry's like, I don't want to be in this. And I think getting through it and coming out on the other side victorious and being able to stand on my own 2 feet and persevere has been the most compelling thing for me to show that I really can do whatever I set my mind to, because there's so many obstacles that we face day in and day out. And to be able to roll with the punches, especially in I'm diagnosed with ADHD, depression, and anxiety. And so all three of those things together create a perfect storm of panic, frustration, sadness. And I would absolutely tell myself the same thing. I think that that's invaluable information.
Absolutely. And honestly, in this industry, I have been able to shift my mentality on my mental illness, so to speak, and I use it as my superpower. I have borderline personality disorder, which falls right in line with ADHD and bipolar. I have been able to use it to my advantage and see it in a different light and see it as my superpower. Where, don't get me wrong, the low days are low, but I come up from the lows so motivated, so positive, and with so many phenomenal, passionate ideas and ideas that I'm so excited about. And I always spread that across to my team, and it excites them and it motivates me to be a better person every single day for the people that I am around. And I mean, it's really helped me grow. And I've been able to look at it not as a weakness, as my strength. And I call it my superpower.
I absolutely agree. I think for for my ADHD is what I would consider my superpower. It's just a whirlwind of information constantly spiraling around. And sometimes it can get overwhelming, but at work, I think that really helps me push the envelope a little bit. Because there's things where normally people might not think that way, or they might not think out of the box in the specific way I would. And I think it really helps push for more. I would like to know if you're, interested in sharing, has there been a time where you've stood in your own way, either knowingly or unknowingly, and How did you address that, and what was the outcome?
Oh, it's definitely me that stands in my own way most often. And that's on those lows of telling myself that I just can't get there and that all could be lost. And I've had those moments several times in my career where I've written my resignation letter because I didn't feel as though I was good enough or would ever be good enough. And I sleep on it and I think about it the next morning and I write down my accomplishments and everyone that I've impacted in a positive way. And I remind myself of that. And I keep this little guest checkbook that I have kept for 15 years now. And every single note that a guest or an employee has ever written me has gone into that guest checkbook. Every single one. And it is so full that it's ripping on both sides. And I'll read those. And it reminds me of why I do what I do and how much of a positive impact I've made on so many people's lives.
Absolutely. One of the most important things that I've been told was by Malcolm. We love Malcolm. I asked him, I said, Malcolm, how do you keep going when you feel like all is lost? And he told me, you have to find something that gives you the power to keep going. You have to find something in the industry that you care about. He always says, COGS will be here at the end of the year. Labor will be here at the end of the year. Hiring, turnover, all that will be here at the end of the year. What's going to be the identifying factor that keeps you going in the industry and keeps you on the right path? And he said that for him, it's people. And I think for a lot of people, it's people, because there's something about being able to affect someone's day, week, month, year in a positive light just by simply giving perfect customer service, by being the person that everybody wants to talk to. I love that you've kept everything that people have given you. I really do. I think that it's so, so awesome.
We are in the people business, and I truly love people, even though there are those days where my social battery has run out and I want to sit alone with my headphones on and shut the world out for a little while. I genuinely love people. And throughout the day, like spending 30 minutes with someone, giving them exceptional food and exceptional service, and just asking them about their day, giving them a compliment about something that I find, like whether it's their earrings are beautiful or they have great shoes on or the way they interact with the people at their table, whatever it is, like, and then making those connections with people, it's life changing, not only for them, but for me. And every time I've had those moments where, you're in the weeds and everything seems like it's falling apart and I'm on the brink of starting to cry, someone shows me that same day in that same moment why I love this and why I love what I do. It can be something so small. Like a child drew me a picture one day when everything was terrible. She drew me a picture and ran over to give it to me and then gave me this big hug. And it made my day so much better. It really changed my day. And I've had a customer that's come over to me when she saw the tears in my eyes and how hard it was running. That was at Genghis, running back and forth to the grill and out on the floor because we're short staffed and we're so busy. And they could see that everything was falling apart. And the guest had just yelled in my face in front of everyone. And I kept my composure. And she came over to me and she said, you know what? You're doing an amazing job. And I thank you for everything you do. And at that moment, I broke into tears. But it was I was so grateful for that recognition of myself, of being a real human, and knowing that somebody could see how hard I was trying after just being, verbally abused in front of the entire restaurant.
Absolutely. That unfortunately happens so much. And it's sad. A lot of people think down on the restaurant industry because it's the lesser in job, So we have white collar, white collar workers who are coming in and they want to enjoy their meal. And that's right of them to want to enjoy their meal, spend their money on something nice. But a lot of times it goes unnoticed how much work we do. I'm curious if you feel comfortable talking about it. What was it like navigating those long days, the 12 to 15-hour days, and then still coming home to take care of kids? Because the point of this is I want to talk about each individual's own struggles that they face and really show the individuality of each frontline worker and how they all come together and at the end of the day we all thrive, or we unfortunately, some of us, we decide this industry is not for us. Obviously we're two that have kept going. How did you navigate those muddy waters?
That has been the hardest part of staying in the industry. I have had many sleepless nights and many nights where I have cried and felt as though I was failing my children by not being present enough, because I would have 6 days a week of I would send them to school in the morning and make them breakfast and lunch and not see them again until the next morning. And it was devastating. It has been such a struggle figuring out, am I doing the right thing? And so desperately to be present and excel at both work and as a mother. And so it has been an emotional battle. And I have to sit down and really remind myself that I'm doing this and excelling my career for them, and that this is the industry and this is the world we live in the industry. But I also remind myself that it doesn't have to stay this way. It doesn't have to remain like this. And changes are coming. When COVID happened, we saw a shift start to happen in the industry where more organizations are truly realizing what burnout is and how far we're really going in this industry to push people. And typically people in this industry already struggle with mental health issues. A lot of them have families. And we're trying to navigate all of this while devoting all of our time and attention to a job. And it's not sustainable in the long run. In the long run, we have to have, in this industry, has to understand that our leaders need mental health breaks as well. And that culture needs to be the most important thing for not only our guests, but for our employees to sustain a healthy work-life balance. Because at the end of the day, typically a job will replace you. And the only people that are going to remember 20 years from now that I worked all the time are my children. They're the only ones. And so now I'm actually looking for an organization that shares the same values and that same mindset and that same culture that I'm looking for. And I think that shift is coming more and more since COVID happened. We're just not there yet.
Absolutely. No, 120%. I think COVID really did. I mean, it put so many people out of work. And then the ones that stayed, the ones that, I mean, I was essential in that time. I'm sure you were as well. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That was a funny time.
Oh, yeah.
I got given a paper that said essential in case I got pulled over past curfew so that I could show that I was coming from work or going to work. It was insane. But during that time, you are correct. We had a lot of people out of work, and that pushed a lot of places. It was only management on I mean, I worked in fast food at that time, so it was mostly management that worked with a select few of employees, and then gradually as time went on, we started introducing more employees to it. But it really was our staffing shorted and our sales influxed, and it really pushed a lot of people to their limits. And I think beyond that, this new generation of workers have a higher identifier of self-worth. They are able to know what they're going to do, and they can articulate what they're not going to do. And I think that it's a great shift that we're having, and I don't think that it's just restaurants. I think that there's so many fields where people are overworked, feel underpaid, don't feel appreciated, don't have the support of their peers or their leadership, and it takes a toll. I believe in people and I believe in our ability to change. I just think we need to hear more voices. And again, I beyond happy to be able to have you on this episode because this is the raw and authentic side of the downfalls of the industry. And we keep pushing, we keep persevering, and that's because we love what we do. We are seeing a lot of people leave the restaurant industry currently. Like you talked about, the mental health rates, thousands and thousands of people every year are suffering from anxiety and depression, bare minimum. 17% of frontline workers in the restaurant industry a year will be diagnosed with some sort of substance abuse issue. That to me, we have kids. Think about fast food, the places that don't sell alcohol, where they have 15, 16, 17-year-old kids who are putting in 40 hours and then still going to school and doing their homework and then coming home and dealing with whatever they have to deal with at home, which, we belittle sometimes the amount that a 17-year-old has to deal with. But when you take into account how much they're doing, if they're also balancing a 40-hour work week, it is a lot. And those substance abuse issues don't stop at adults. They go into kids as well. And I think that that's why it's such an important topic to talk about, because there's so many life-threatening drugs on the streets that we're in this industry sometimes driving people to try for a relief of whatever, And again, I cannot thank anybody who comes on here enough to share their experience with me. Is there, on the front of what I just said, is there anything that you'd like to continue off of and share your experience on, and maybe when it comes to the younger generation and the kids that are also being affected, is there anything that you'd like to say to that?
Oh, absolutely. It is the industry we're in and the burnout. And that's, I think, anything that involves people, whether that's restaurants or retail, especially those hospitality industries with these kids that are working in them. Uh, it really drives them to grow up in a way that can be positive but can also be negative. And especially when you're working in a restaurant where alcohol is legal, it is common, most people drink. I have met several teenagers with alcohol addictions, and from 16 on to 20 years old. And it's not healthy, and we don't provide enough outlets within the industry for these kids to go to. We when we provide insurance, we're not providing regular mental health insurance. We're providing basic physical and dental insurance. And okay, that's great, but it typically isn't even offered to our hourly employees. That's typically just salaried management. And I think that that's something that's greatly missing from our industries, is that mental health insurance, or even just someone within the organization that is a therapist that can talk to people. I think we're missing that all over the United States now. But these kids, and seeing it becomes so normal, because these kids then get looked at as adults. It's like, hey, well, do you have a fake ID? Do you want to go grab a drink with me afterwards? Or we can get into this place and that's fine. It just becomes this normalized thing where their brains can't even fully comprehend, because they're not fully developed yet, the damage that it's doing to them. And there should always be that outlet that all of the employees, if you're having a crisis of some kind, that should be available to you, whether that be through companies' insurance for mental health, or their HR specialist. They have an HR specialist that's specifically used as a work therapist. It's a dream of mine, and I know people will probably think I'm crazy for suggesting it, but I think it would truly change people's lives.
120%. Now that we did steep down for a second, and that's okay because again, that's what the point of this is. As we're getting towards the end of the podcast now, there's a question that I ask everybody that comes on. It's a simple question that everybody takes 2 seconds to answer. What did you want to be for your career when you were a kid?
I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to be a famous singer and actor. I wanted to be, it's funny, I was just telling my son this. I wanted to be a lawyer, but the base of all of it was I wanted to be someone that could help people on a large scale. And I do that every day in the industry. It may be a minor thing that I impact somebody's day with, but I do it every day.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, no, being able to affect people is, I mean, I just had, not to toot my own horn, but I just had a gentleman come in and he enjoyed my service. He enjoyed how the time I took to make sure everything was right on his order. And he made an entire post about it. And it was nice to see, and it's nice to have that recognition. As we wrap up here, I want to take a second to put the spotlight on you, let you tell the people who, again, reiterate who you are, what you do, what you're looking for, in case any recruiter may be listening, in case a potential career path, even if it's 2 years down the road, someone finds this podcast and thinks, oh, wow, I really like her. Just let the people know where to find you and how you can help an organization, because anybody that gives me their time, I want to make sure that they're getting something in return.
That's so nice. I love that. I am Lindsey Pafumi. I am first and foremost mother of two. I reside in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was just the regional director for the East Coast for Crave Worthy Brands, but specific as grill. I won Operator of the Year in this company and GM of the period 3 times, which were some of my highest achievements. I'm a serve safe instructor and proctor, and I just genuinely love what I do. I don't think I'll ever do anything else. I love people and I love food, so you can't go wrong.
Yeah, that's a little bit of my problem. I snack too much.
Yeah.
Well, also because then, I mean, I think you can attest to this. There's a lot of times where I forget to eat, or I'm just doing a lot of stuff and I'm just like, oh yeah, I haven't had a meal today, but I've just been constantly snacking.
Yes. Who has time for a meal?
No, really though. Who does have time for a meal?
Yeah.
Well, Lindsey, I absolutely appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking to me today. Is there anything that you hope to get out of this experience, or is there anything that else that I can do to help you at all?
I can't think of anything now. This has been wonderful, and I think it's been a long needed thing. So I'm very, very proud that you're doing this, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. And I cannot wait to listen to every episode.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsey. Again, everybody, that was Lindsey. Remind me how to pronounce your last name.
Pafumi.
Pafumi. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna be mindful of your time. I'm gonna let you go ahead and as they would say in the Genghis calls, I'm gonna let you have 10 minutes of your time back.